Everything you're about to hear is for education and entertainment purposes only. Whilst we are licensed, we're not aware of your personal financial circumstances. Any advice is general advice. Equity Mates operates under Australian Financial Services Licence 540697.
Equity Mates!
I will say this about investing. Everything you do learn is cumulative. What I learned at 20 is useful.
Equity.
Welcome to another episode of Equity Mates, a podcast where we explore what's possible in the world of investing. If you've just joined us for the first time, you have joined us for an absolute cracker of an episode. My name is Bryce, and as always, I'm joined by my equity buddy, Ren. How are you?
I'm very good, Bryce. I'm very excited for this episode. You say in your introduction every time we explore what's possible in the world of investing.
Yes.
Well, here is what is possible. Someone can start a Mexican restaurant and 18 years later can run a Mexican restaurant empire and list that on the Australian share market.
Yeah, so to wrap that up, we are very excited because today we have the founder and co-CEO, Stephen Marks from Guzman y Gomez, and his other co-CEO, Hilton Brett, joining us in the studio because they have just lodged for IPO on the ASX.
Yeah, so their prospectus has been lodged and we are interviewing both of them. Maybe the only podcast that got to interview them. Maybe. Allegedly. But this is really exciting for us because we first spoke to Stephen back in 2019, pre-COVID, and he was so energetic. I think that was there's been a few interviews over the years where we've left and it's just been like we've been so pumped up. And this was one of them. This guy loves Mexican food.
Loves Mexican food, yeah. Well, that episode was actually titled The Ambitions of Going Public. So this has been obviously on the roadmap for a while. The growth story has been pretty phenomenal. And we've been lucky enough to have known Steve for the last 4 years. So the new part of the story is from today.
Well, here we go. I've got their numbers from 2019. They had 120 stores in Australia and 13 stores internationally. At the end of last year, they had 183 stores in Australia and 26 stores internationally. And in terms of network sales, sales from their stores.
Yes.
In F19, they did 254 million.
Okay.
Last financial year,
yeah,
759 million.
Nice.
That's a lot of $13 burritos.
$13.80. So there are some pieces of jargon that are likely going to be mentioned a number of times throughout this episode that we should just define so you're clear on what we're speaking about. The first is QSR, which is just quick service restaurants. So that's a category of fast food restaurants. The other is AUV, average unit volume.
AUV being average unit volume it's like the average sales per store.
Yeah.
Just in case we weren't busting that jargon enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are three main models. There's the corporate model, there's the franchisee model, and the master franchise model. The corporate model is obviously stores owned and operated by head office. The franchise model is where they allow people like Ren and I to start a Guzman y Gomez operation and we pay head office the privilege to do so. And then the master franchise model is where it's the same thing, but we get to operate a region.
Yeah, well, and if we get that region, we can then franchise within that region as well.
So the reason why we just want to make that clear is because there's there will be a lot of discussion on expansion and that makes up a pretty important part of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, Guzman runs all three models. In Australia at the end of March 2024, they had 185 stores, 62 were corporate, so they were run by head office, then 123 were franchise. Most of those are just the franchise, the second model that you were talking about, but South Australia is a master franchise. Similarly, if you look overseas, Singapore and Japan, master franchise. In the US, yes, they are in the US, they run corporate stores. So that's just a bit of, I guess, restaurant industry jargon to be familiar with because hopefully we're going to pick their brains on where it all goes.
And we should have said at the top, but if you have no idea what Guzman y Gomez is,
true.
It's a fast food Mexican restaurant chain.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I reckon most Australians would be familiar with it. If you're not from Australia, if you're from the States, think of it as a better version of Chipotle.
Oh, yeah, much better. Anyway, so we have the absolute privilege of sitting down with Stephen and Hilton. We'll be covering company history and founding story, looking at where the company is at today, and then importantly, what the future holds, there are some things that Stephen and Hilton aren't going to be able to talk about, and one of those is valuation. So at the end of this episode, Ren and I are going to be comparing Guzman y Gomez to some of the fast-growing global competitors in the quick service restaurant space, and really looking at how they're valued compared to some of their peers. So super important question to answer as you're looking to decide if this is an appropriate investment.
So stick around for that. But before then, let's go to our conversation with Stephen Marks and Hilton Brett, the co-CEOs of Guzman y Gomez.
All right. Well, Stephen, Hilton, welcome to Equity Mates.
Thanks for having us. Good to see you guys again.
It's a pretty exciting moment, Stephen, because you've just lodged for IPO, and we went back in the history books. We first spoke to you 4 years ago, early stages Equity Mates, about the ambition to IPO Guzman y Gomez, and here we are. How are you feeling?
So excited. I actually listened to it before I got on it just to make sure what I said was accurate. It was funny having TC on. We're getting ready for IPO. Well, it's finally come.
Yeah.
Everything great takes time, but reflecting on the process of putting together prospectus is, it just shows that, through all these years, with the support of our investors, our board, and obviously the amazing team at GYG, that this company's been built really, really strong. And it's just a testament when you get all these external advisors that obviously have to take part in putting together the prospectus, is that we've really built an amazing business. And it's so great to have Hilton on board and help lead us through this process, because it's a lot of work. You got to sort of build the prospectus and run the business. So, and Hilton and the team have just done an amazing job.
Yeah, so you've lived every step of this journey, 18 years and counting.
24 hours a day.
Yeah. Hilton, you've come in the last few years as co-CEO. What's it been like jumping in and joining this journey as it sort of just goes from strength to strength?
I've loved every minute. It's such a privilege to work alongside Stephen and really bring his vision and his dream to reality. It's been an amazing. Well, I mean, I've been with the business on the board for 6.5 years, and joined Stephen back in June last year, and as co-CEO in October. And it's such a privilege to be part of this amazing journey, and we're really just getting started.
Yeah.
I know it's been 18 years in the making, but the opportunity to realise this dream of building the best restaurant business in the world and change the way the masses eat is an amazing opportunity to be part of.
We call it a milestone, but it's really just the starting line, if you look at it. Yeah. So we'll let the team maybe enjoy one day.
How does that feel after 18 years, you finally made the starting line?
It's like when people join GYG, we always say, man, it's an intense place to work, but it's highly rewarding, because, we're out here to be the best and biggest restaurant company in the world. So people always say, is it always like this? Yeah, probably for the next 20, 50 years. So get used to it. But it's exciting.
Let's use that as a point to just give a brief overview of the founding story, because a lot of people are familiar with the brand, but probably less about how we've got to this point. So, Stephen, are you able just to give us a quick overview of the founding story and how we have managed to get to here?
Yeah, sure. So I moved, I'm from New York originally, and but I am an Australian citizen now,
Nice.
Finally.
Congratulations.
Very proud to be. I do have 2 Aussie daughters. And a son now. But I got here over 22 years ago. And I think, growing up in New York, I was so lucky to have such amazing Mexican food. And I came down here after spending 8 years on Wall Street and had always been very entrepreneurial. And I came down here, obviously, in hopes of building a hotel, actually. And I was lucky my best friend moved here, who's the co-founder of GYG. His name's Robert Hazen. Still one of my best friends since I'm 4. And couldn't get the hotel really through zoning and just really to bring it to life the way we wanted to. And we had a number of different businesses together. But we were lucky growing up in New York to have such great Mexican food. And obviously went to a Mexican restaurant here, then went to another and another and another and another. And I think any founder is slightly obsessed with what they do. And I thought they were all extremely average. And I remember walking into the office and telling Robert, I got the next big idea. I said, we're going to reintroduce Mexican food to this country. He's like, but you're not even Mexican. I said, but it doesn't matter. We know how it should taste and what it is. And that began the story of Guzman y Gomez, which we named in honor of friends, brought in chefs from Mexico, surrounded ourselves with the Latino community. And our first store came to life in 2006 in Newtown. And when you open up, a restaurant, you always think it's going to work immediately, and it didn't, and then the second one didn't really work, and the third one really didn't work. And I think, at that point, you really look at yourself in the mirror and you realize your values mean something, and the values of GYG have been around this since day one. And the number one value, it's all about the food, and we've never compromised on the food at GYG, and we can get into clean later, or our people. And many of the people from the beginning are still with us. And when you look back on 18 years and, the mission for GYG is to reinvent fast food and change the way the masses eats, it's really resonating with guests coming to GYG. And I could not be more proud of the team at GYG, our investors, our board, and our guests that come into GYG. So 18 years, man, it's been a journey.
Yeah.
But you know what? We're only getting started, which is exciting.
So 18 years, and now you've got over 200 stores. Tell us a little bit about the network development over that time. And in particular, tell us about, I guess, the mix of franchise and corporate stores and how that's rolled out over the years.
Yeah, so when we started, it's funny now that obviously we're listing, GYG's had a board in place since 2009, and it's the guys that built McDonald's Australasia, a guy named Guy Russo, Steve German, Pete Ritchie, still an investor, was around also in the day, but Guy's still the chairman. And when we started, they were and have been very influential. And, we owned the first, say 6 restaurants. And I remember when they broke even, it was like, that was a huge milestone. And they said, maybe we can start to franchise, but you can't franchise till you can charge a certain royalty. I said, so your revenue's got to be X. I was like, well, we're not even close to that. He will keep working, kid. And we kept working, and we got to a point where the model worked, right? There was enough revenue coming through GYG, and the model worked, and we brought in our first franchisee, which was in Queensland. And it was the Maradigue family. They're still investors. They still are franchisees. And they played such a huge part of the GYG journey, because I always thought, would a franchisee love it as much as we do? When you find people and you look back on the journey over 18 years, like originally it's a dream, right? And then it becomes other people's dream. And I think when those two come together, it's a beautiful thing to watch, right? Because it's not your dream anymore. And all of a sudden you see your dream and everybody else's dream come to fruition. And I think going to this IPO is just, a huge milestone for everyone. So when we look at GYG now, we have a very healthy mix of corporate stores and franchise stores. And we like it, and it works in Australia. It may not work in other places. And I think that it stems from GYG's values. Like we're a very transparent, open business, and we have amazing relationships with our franchisees. Our job is to make sure they're more profitable year after year. And when we look at the mix that we have in this country, we have a big corporate team, right? So we know where we can run great restaurants, and we know where our franchisees can run restaurants. So we just look at it. We want to run great GYGs. We don't care if it's franchise or it's corporate, but we want to see, most importantly, who's going to be better suited for the community. So a lot of regional stores are definitely franchised because they're from that area. They're involved in their communities. A lot of metro stores, obviously that's where we're based. We really look at it as just GYG, and I think our franchisees know that. And we don't take any rebates. We have an amazing relationship with these guys, and we're truly one team. There's no divide like corporate versus franchise. And Hilton's obviously oversees, a vast part of this business, and it's our pipelines. You want to make sure, especially when you're a public company, that you're hitting the store openings that you hit. So it's a very healthy mix of franchise and corporate. Maybe Hilton could just elaborate more on that mix.
We've got 185 restaurants in Australia. 62 of those are corporate, and the remainder being franchised. Combination of individual franchisees that have one store, and then some that have multiple stores. And then if we think about South Australia, we've got a master franchise agreement. Similarly, a master franchise agreement with our partners in Singapore and also in Japan. And then in the US, we operate as corporate restaurants. So for us, it's always been, as Stephen said, the relationship with our franchisees. It's all about partnership. It's about obviously having the right people running the right restaurants within the local communities. And most importantly, ensuring that where we've got, obviously with our franchise model, and what we're super proud about is the economics of our restaurants and the returns that our franchisees deliver. So when we look at our target economics, we're always kind of very, very focused on making sure that our franchisees get very solid returns, as well as obviously from a corporate perspective.
Now, Hilton, I want to stay with you for a second because we want to turn to analysing GYG today as a business. And for people who are not familiar with your background, you've run an ASX-listed company before. So this is familiar territory for you. So when you come into a business like GYG and you start to analyse it, you think about, as a listed business, how am I going to need to look at this company? What are some of the really key metrics that you're you're focusing on when assessing the health of the business?
I think that most importantly, obviously, when we look at the metrics of any consumer business, and in particular GYG, is the restaurant economics. And that's the most important thing, is obviously having strong economics, generating strong four-wall margins, generating healthy returns on our capital invested, and importantly, obviously, from a franchise perspective in relation to the franchisees' returns that they generate. So from a corporate perspective, we obviously we generate our revenue out of our corporate restaurants. We generate our four-wall margins, which are running at around just short of 18%. And then as far as our franchise business is concerned, we generate an upfront franchise fee that is in the order of $90,000 per franchise. So GYG out of the franchises generates royalties. We generate 8% on the first $60,000 of revenue, and then 15% in excess of that. So the most important thing, as I said to you, is the ability to continue to obviously drive strong economics from a like-for-like perspective. So when we think about the business, we're always thinking about a business that's got growth, both from an organic perspective as well as from a like-for-like perspective. GYG has generated extremely strong like-for-like growth over the last 4 years and continues to do that. And then I think that one of probably the most important things of this business, and when you look at any consumer business, is the white space. So when we look at GYG today, we've got the opportunity in Australia to take the business to an excess of 1,000 restaurants. As you would have seen in the prospectus, we commissioned a third-party independent report company called Think Economics, who did some research on the industry in terms of the general QSR industry, who the players are in the market, what the growth looks like, and really was a sense of validation for us in terms of the opportunity to have in excess of 1,000 restaurants in Australia over the foreseeable future. There's been substantial investment in this business over the last 18 years, putting us in a position where with the opportunity to open 30 restaurants next year. And then with our real estate team, we've got the infrastructure and the support to be able to continue to build that and to open up to 40 restaurants per annum over the next 5 years, so that we're slow build in that regard. When you look at the environment today, what we're seeing is general consumer environment is a little bit tougher. So a lot of brands are pulling back on marketing, whereas for us, it's an opportunity to really continue to invest in marketing and drive the growth of the brand. When we look at our digital component of our business, 25% of our business is done through the delivery aggregators. That's obviously been a strong trend within the market. We have about 17% of our revenue coming out of our app. That is an area that we see substantial growth coming from. A lot of our customers are ordering from the app. It's intuitive. We've invested a lot of money. It's unique to GYG. So GYG, if you think about Australia, in a nutshell, big levers to be able to drive comp growth, massive white space where there's an opportunity to get up to 1,000 restaurants. And then we're just getting started globally. We've got 16 restaurants in Singapore, 5 in Japan, and then the US, if there's a massive opportunity where we've got 4 restaurants. And I'll let Steve talk to you about the US, which we're very excited about as well.
I love that, Hilton. There was so much information there, and it's so exciting to sort of hear some of the tenets of where this business could go. I want to pause and just say the Guzman breakfast burrito, highly underrated. So well done there. More people should be eating that.
Thank you. I think it's the best thing on the menu. I'm not even kidding, and I'm glad you understand that.
And I think, look, there's a lot of things we can talk about. Like, we want to talk about where that 1,000 restaurant number comes from and where you see it, the opportunity with like how fast you are and where that can go. But I think let's start with food, because like that's at its core what this business is. And Guzman, with your real clean food, like it's been a big part of your marketing campaign, and I guess like of your core values as well. So Stephen, maybe talk to us about food, and I guess how this like real food, clean food can be a differentiator and a competitive advantage in the market.
For years, people had said, "Oh, you guys are fast casual." I said, No, we're fast food. And when we started opening up drive-thrus, they said, "McDonald's is fast food." I said, "No, we're fast food." I said, "McDonald's isn't food." And I really believe it. I mean, I think traditional fast food isn't really food anymore. And I think what's amazing is, when I talk about food, I'm talking about real food. Obviously we've launched Clean as a New Healthy. We did it in 2009-10. We relaunched it because we have, there's probably another 500,000 people a week that come to GYG. And to us, after you eat food, you should feel good. Our mission is to reinvent fast food and change the way the masses eat. And I think when you come to GYG and you see the alignment of everybody, they really believe that. It's just not something that we're saying. Like, I really think it's a food company. You have a social responsibility to serve the people that come to your restaurant real food. And I think, when I see this younger generation coming in, and if you look at our university stores, younger people may have a much shorter attention span these days, but they know what they want to eat. You know, like my children, regardless that they may be slightly biased, man, they don't eat traditional fast food. And I think for years, the problem is they'd had no other alternative. We've given the masses an alternative to fast food, right? And we really believe this is fast food for this generation. And if you see, as Hilton was just discussing, you know, our growth throughout the years, our comp growth throughout the years, it's resonating. It's something that we're really proud of.
Can you, I guess, elaborate on how hard it has been to actually achieve getting that clean food in, and I think particularly around how difficult it'll be for a competitor to replicate that? I think, Ren, you have experience in Coles.
Yeah, so I worked at Coles, who have done a lot of good stuff, especially in their meat supply chain. And this isn't an ad for Coles, but you know, they did sow store-free pork, they did hormone-free beef, and I just like it's you know, something that you market, but like I saw behind the scenes just how hard it was to like fix up their supply chains and get all those things. So whenever I see those claims now, I'm like, oh, that's going to be hard for a competitor to replicate.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, I think there's two ways to look at it. Either you really believe it and it's in GYG's DNA. You know what I mean? And maybe it started with me, but, you know, like-minded people get together. You know, so I'll give you an example. We buy, I think last year we bought over 8 million avocados. So all fruit and veg comes in fresh to GYG. We're probably one of the biggest, you know, Roma tomato buyers in the country. Outside the supermarkets, we're the biggest free range. And I'm glad you brought up, man, we have a view on animal welfare. Our pork's sow stall free. Our chicken's free range. Not RSPCA, but free range. Very, very different. And when you see all this beautiful, you know, fresh chicken coming in, and obviously food safety is number one to us. We got to make sure, obviously, that our food is cooked properly, and we can go into that in detail. We have all this fruit and veg comes in fresh. You got to see when people walk into our cool rooms, they can't believe it. We have our tortilla, right? It's our recipe. Everything's GYG's recipe, even though, you know, it's stuff we get made by La Costeña out of Mexico, and Mission Foods makes our tortillas. We realized once we opened up our first drive-thru, we were going to sell French fries. Now, 10 years before that, somebody said, you want to sell French fries? I will never, ever sell a French fry. They said, we're going to open up a drive-thru. I was like, oh, shit, we're going to sell the best French fry, you know? And I started looking at French fries, and all of a sudden I'd see 70% potato, 80% potato. I was just like, holy shit, man, what's in this other part of the food? This started, this whole clean's new healthy. And then I realized I was looking at our tortillas, and we go through so many tortillas, and I serve a preservative 282 for shelf life. I'm like, I don't need shelf life. We go through so many. So we went back to Mission Foods and said, we want to take this out. He's like, well, we don't take that out. I said, but you can take it out, can't you? And it became the first preservative-free tortilla, which they sell commercially. And we did that with all of our suppliers. Like sometimes there's a coloring in it. Sometimes it's, you know, it's usually preservative or there's an additive, right? And I just thought everything was just naturally fresh. But we had salsas being made for us. Obviously, it doesn't have to be fresh. Obviously, we do a fresh pico de gallo every day in guacamole. And to basically get clean took 3 years.
Wow.
You know, 3 years of convincing people why this was so important. And it's not easy, you know what I mean? But you look at, you know, any company that you build, you have passion for, nothing's easy, you know, but it really meant something to us, you know what I mean? And what's beautiful is you realize that it means something to your guests coming in. You know, so all of a sudden when people eat GYG and they say, hey, when I eat your food, I feel good after, unlike every other traditional fast food, then that's amazing. You know, and that's the way we look at our food, right? It is our job, especially in fast food, right? You know, you got single moms and dads. You got families that need your help. Our thing is, you come to GYG, we'll take care of it. You just come in and enjoy it. And we take that very, very seriously.
Gym junkies who need the clean chicken protein.
That's it. Double chicken, mini bowl,
Straight
brown
after.
rice.
That's it. That's exactly what I get.
I mean, but honestly, is there anything healthier?
No.
None.
Well,
put a little bit of hot sauce on it. You know, black beans. Come on.
So good.
You know, there's so many food businesses don't talk about food.
Yeah.
You come to GYG, man, that's all we talk about.
Yeah.
Food and food safety.
So another differentiator was speed. And that was probably the one thing I walked away from our interview 4 years ago. Just that was the thing that stuck in my mind, how passionate you were about how quickly you guys could make real food, custom ordered, and just get it out the door. And I remember you back then you were talking about you were the fastest, or like right up there in terms of the fastest of all of your QSR peers. Help us understand how quick you are and how important that is to the business.
What's the fastest burrito you've ever made?
And out of you two, who's quicker at making a burrito?
I've seen Hilt on the line. He is the son of a butcher, by the way, so the guy has a passion for food. He can probably grill a better piece of chicken. I think I can roll a faster burrito. That's just because I have more experience. You know, but speed is like, this is the whole thing about reinventing fast food. It's got to be food, and then it's got to be fast. You know, so for GYG, you know, it's obviously all about food quality, accuracy, and speed. So we, as Hilton was talking about earlier, we developed our own bespoke stickering system that gives, so everything at GYG is fully customizable, right? And it comes out and then the modification you want kind of walks the line with you. And then it goes onto our kitchen delivery system, which then knows exactly if it's pickup, if it's obviously through our delivery aggregator, it's through the app, or it goes through drive-through. And we clock everything. So as Hilton said, man, our orders, I mean, it matters. You know, if you're basically in city locations, CBD locations, you know, it has to be 75% under 4 minutes. That's the goal. Okay. We hit about 7%. Our average drive-through time sits between 3:30 and 4 minutes. You know, I think McDonald's is around 3:30. You know, I mean, everybody else is much, much longer than that. But we realize that, you know, the most important thing is food quality. Like the rice got to be hot and fluffy. You know, we temp every piece of chicken. You know what I mean? That brisket that, you know, it's got to be tossed beautifully. And, you know, we teach people to love the food, you know, our people. And what we've launched recently about 2 years ago, which was a game changer for GYG, the Culinary School of Excellence for GYG. So there's so many stories that we've gone through in building, you know, our recipes and our products. And we always believe that the people at GYG, if they understand the stories, they get an emotional connection to food. You know, it's kind of when you temp a piece of chicken, you put it gently into the pan. You don't just flip it. I was like, you know, I mean, that's disgraceful. You know, you got to have some respect for the chicken. And the people at first, like, I think this guy's crazy. But then if you get enough crazy people that have passion, everybody really believes in it. And then you guys try, like, they're there. You know, I mean, we look at fast food as hospitality. That's the way we see it. Somebody's walking in, and it's our job to deliver an experience that's memorable. And I don't care if people call it fast food or not. You know what I mean? That is our job, and our salespeople, you know, and the way we train and develop people is there. So the speed plays one huge aspect of it. You know what I mean? And I think when you see our comp growth and our AUVs, like Hilton was saying, you know, we can talk about breakfast in a second, but people in Australia eat at certain times, usually 12 to 2 and 6 to 9. So people used to say, what do you do between 12 and 6? I'm like, I don't really care between 12 and 6. You know, we have the platforms that basically can drive more revenue during the times that they eat. And if you're not fast, and you can't do it. So, you know, what's beautiful now, as Hilton was saying, you know, the foundations we built at GYG because of our board, because of our investors, and because we know we're really just beginning. We've invested so heavily in these. And that's why you see the huge revenue growth, you know, our AUVs, you know, through our drive-through stores or even our strip stores, just because the food quality, the operating platforms, man, they're world class. And I think going through this whole prospectus process, you know, even though we all knew it, you know, to go through something so smoothly and getting all these external advisors, like, wow, it's an amazing business you built.
Yeah.
And the good thing about GYG, we're very hungry. We have 3 things at GYG. We have this thing that we say, you're good enough to get better. And to us, it's all about hunger, humility, and curiosity. And that's how we drive this business.
Well, yeah, it's been a pretty phenomenal growth story today. I think revenue has been, 29% CAGR from FY15 to FY23. So that's amazing. So the question then for us as investors is where to from here? Let's start with Australia. You've spoken about the 1,000 store opportunity. The Prezzo suggests that Australia's sort of 19% penetrated, so a lot of opportunity there. To put that into context, Macca's has about 1,043 stores as of April 2024, and Domino's has 733. So huge growth potential. Can you just talk through that 1,000 store opportunity, why the 1,000, and where to from here?
When we look at where we are today, we'll open 26 restaurants this year, financial year. We've done 24 with 2 more to go during the month of June. We approved in the last 12 months 49 sites. So as we were talking about earlier, we've made a substantial investment in this business over the years to be able to have the platform for growth. We have a real estate team of about 30 people. Of that, 10 people are real estate development managers, and their sole role is to identify sites and to open those sites. And on average, a real estate development person does between 4 and 5 sites a year. We see ourselves getting to 40 restaurants over the next 5 years, starting off with 30 restaurants next year. We've got a pipeline of 30 restaurants that are approved that we have planned in to open next year. When we think about restaurants from a pipeline perspective, it takes approximately 2.5 years from when we approve a site for a drive-through to open, and a strip is anywhere between kind of 12 and 18 months, just depending on the site. So we've got a very strong and healthy pipeline to be able to, as we said earlier, open 30 restaurants next year with the ability to build up to 40 restaurants over the next 5 years. Typically, when you look at an example like the Gold Coast, we've got 14 restaurants within that area, and our average unit volume in the Gold Coast is doing about $96,000 per restaurant per week, relative to our average unit volume in our current network of 87,000. And those 14 restaurants have a population density of around 30,000 people per 3 kilometres. So that kind of validates the opportunity that when we look at Australia, the opportunity to get to 1,000 restaurants, effectively having a restaurant every 3 kilometres with about 30,000 people around that. Which really kind of supports the thesis for us about the opportunity to get to 1,000. And then obviously, as a business, we're very, very well set up to do that through a combination of corporate and restaurants. When we look at the future, we're kind of our target splits about 85% drive-through and 15% strip restaurants. Just from a property perspective, we would say to you, as you are aware, obviously McDonald's with over 1,000 restaurants. When it comes to landlord and developers, GYG has obviously become a very well-known brand to them, good covenant, and really that kind of partner of choice for AAA drive-throughs and AAA real estate. That's one of the things we don't compromise on food, we don't compromise on people, we definitely don't compromise on real estate. It's all about AAA real estate, and with the unit economics that we've got, which are really industry leading, that enables us to secure those AAA drive-throughs, and we can pay the rents that most other QSR players can't pay because of the volumes that we do. Now, obviously, when I say we pay the rents, we still have very attractive economics in terms of occupancy costs. So, that obviously allows us to still generate those four-wall margins of 20+% in terms of EBITDA, which are also very fundamental to the drivers of growth. As we said, we also have a mix of corporate and franchise restaurants with a target mix going forward of 60% franchise and 40% corporate, so very, very well set up from a growth perspective. We've got franchisees that within our system that are always looking for additional sites, and obviously that's a function of the attractive economics that we've got. And then naturally, from a corporate perspective, we're getting very, very strong ROIs. So we've got a deep pipeline of talent within our business. One of the key focuses for us is around how we grow our team members from within. So opportunities when you join GYD to ultimately start off as a shift leader, become an assistant restaurant manager, and become a manager. And if you'd like to become a franchisee, those pathways exist. And also, even if you're working within the head office structure and want to become a franchisee, we've got a number of instances where that takes place. So very, very strong on development from within.
Obviously, we have an amazing relationship with our franchisees. Majority of them want more restaurants. The people at Ola essentially saying head off, they want to become franchisees. Everybody wants to become franchisees. You know what I mean? Which is fantastic. And the beautiful thing about it just shows how strong the culture is. When you sign up, like Hilton was saying, for drive-thrus, right? And everybody's like, well, that's a lot of restaurants to open. What does McDonald's do and KFC? I mean, these guys have pretty mature networks. And most people can't afford AAA corners unless you have AAA revenue. You know what I mean? And GYG has that. So I'm not saying it's a piece of cake to find real estate. Like, we've got a passionate team of 10 people out there all day long. But we've already developed this pipeline, and it's just growing and growing. We opened up our first drive-thru in 2015. Now people are like, I think I want to do drive-thrus. It takes 2.5 years to open one. So we've already had that pipeline in place, and we've just basically built our team to be even stronger, to add more stores. And that's what gives us the confidence into the future.
The number that stood out to me there, you said, Hilton, that you were aiming for 85% drive-throughs, 15% strip. And I guess this is just a function of where I live in Sydney, but I would have assumed GYG was a lot more strip focused, like CBD location, stuff like that. So that's really interesting to me, 85% drive-through. That's massive.
And the reason that split is, in 2015, we kind of ditched our real estate strategy and said we're going all drive-through. But then you look at these great areas, right? The Baby, we call the store number 1 the Baby in Newtown, right?
Yeah.
Newtown, now we have Marrickville, 5 Dock. I mean, those are beautiful areas, man. There's tons of those places. I was like Hawthorne and Melbourne. You can't get a AAA. You can't get a AAA drive-through.
I was going to say, I used to live in Darlinghurst. I would tap King's Cross
I was about to say
all the
same
time.
thing, yeah.
Store number 3.
Store number 3.
Just crazy busy.
Junction.
I've moved to Redfern now.
I know.
Nothing,
so that would be a great strip.
Yeah.
I've
You know what I mean?
moved
So
to
where we-
Maroubra. No Guzman and
We're
Maroubra
coming.
as well.
It's in the pipeline.
Okay, nice.
Should we just name
Something's
heaps of
not,
suburbs?
something's not open in 12 months. You come.
Oh, well,
I'll put your
go
name as
to
a
yours.
franchisee.
Yeah, great.
But those are great strips, right?
Yeah,
So, I mean,
yeah.
a team knows drive through. If not, I mean, think about the pop that's in a 3K radius of Maroubra, or obviously Marrickville or Erskineville. You know what I mean?
So much.
It's
Yeah,
so
yeah,
much.
yeah.
So those are strips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be
Wow.
honest, right near our office.
Maroubra's going to be a cracking
Is
store
it?
too.
Hey, it's a great part of the world.
Yeah,
I'm
it is. I
a
love it there.
big fan. Yeah. Anyway, let's stop talking about where we live and actually let's go away
We're
from
talking about strips.
let's go away from Australia because you guys mentioned at the top that you're in Japan, Singapore, and the United States, and I think a lot of Australians would be less familiar with the international story. So can you give us a little bit of colour of how you got to those three countries, like why those three countries, and then what's the ambition overseas?
Yeah, maybe I'll touch base on those. So Singapore was our first overseas market. We opened there in 2013, which is a master franchise. The team that's behind it, one's from Queensland. His name is Josh Bell. He used to work in investment banking. He said one day I met him through a friend of ours. He said, "I want to leave banking. I want to join GYG." I said, all right. So he came on board and started working with us, became an area coach. And he knew we were looking to do a deal in Singapore, and he was really, really keen. So he went to go team up with those guys. So it's Josh Bell and a guy named Kok Hung Lim have been our master franchise there since 2013. And the reason why we thought it was going to be a success in Singapore, everybody spoke English. There's a huge expat community. There's a huge banking community. But for us, it was also an opportunity to see if our supply chain was global. And it was easy. I mean, everybody spoke English, so it was very easy to understand if this was going to work or not. I mean, because sometimes the language barrier can become a little bit difficult. And these guys have done a fantastic job. They got 16 restaurants. It's one of the most delivered. I think it's the second most delivered product in Singapore. And these guys, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, people love it over there. I mean, it's really impressive. That's Josh and Kok Hung. Awesome guys. Great team, unbelievable culture in the restaurants, and obviously the food's top notch. In Tokyo, we have a master franchise agreement with a company called the Transit General Office, TGO, who are known as some of the best restaurant operators in the city, and what they specialize in is finding Western brands and Western restaurants and introducing it into the Japanese, obviously, population. So these guys, so imagine Long Grain, Apollo, from Sydney, Bill's Cafe, so they own all those for the Japan market. And Guzman y Gomez. And they opened up 10 years ago also, about 9 years ago. They've got 5 now, and these guys are seeing, 20, 30% comp growth now. So it took a long time to have the Japanese public understand what GYG was. Now, a little bit of time, we had a chicken teriyaki burrito. We even had a beef sukiyaki burrito.
Oh, yeah.
So for GYG, the idea is it's all about the food. Can't compromise in food. But let's get people in to enjoy it. If they need something more familiar, like our stores in Singapore have, there's a larger Indian population there. They want more vegetarian options. So we have a tofu there. We have a mushroom there, which is coming back to Australia. So let everybody get excited. I wanted to drop that somehow. Do you know what I mean? And that's the whole thing, is that it comes with humility, like I was saying earlier. Like, we want busy restaurants, but it has to stay to the standard in our guidelines of food. So those guys now are looking to expand now. It took some time. So, there's 190 people in Japan. Finally, they're loving GYG, so we're excited. And then in the U.S., we have 4 stores in the suburbs of Chicago. But like Hilton said, and I think I said when I first met you guys, we go slow, right? To get it right, we got to keep tweaking the menu, keep tweaking the menu boards, because they only know how to order really on a linear setup like a Chipotle. So they come to GYG, they see the menu boards. Even though we have the speed and we have the drive-thrus and we have a different menu, we got to basically educate people what GYG is. You know what I mean? And we have an amazing team located just in Chicago, obviously in our restaurants, led by a guy named Andrew Marvel, who basically ran marketing for us here. We have one of our best operators from Victoria, Peter down there, who's overseeing operations, full-time real estate guy, HR people. So the whole goal is to build this infrastructure around these restaurants to get them to break even as soon as possible. And then once we get the AUV right, like Hilton was talking about, we get the 4-roll right, then we'll look to grow. But we're taking our time there to make sure we get it right before we obviously hit go. But we'll get there.
Nice.
We'll get there. It's kind of like in Australia. And I think now having Hilton here, and we've got an amazing team at All Essential, it'll free me up to spend a little bit more time there. And I enjoy that process, those early days, building those teams, working with people, when it's very painful and difficult. But the AUVs are growing, which is great because the food is better.
There's quite a nice symmetry to your story. You know, you came from the States to Australia, brought Mexican food from the States to Australia, or like your standard of Mexican food, and now you're bringing it back to the States.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah.
And everybody thinks, oh, you're going back to the States, there's so much Mexican. But I'll tell you, in the U.S., there's so many brands that are mediocre. You know, you have such a huge population to really support a lot of mediocre brands. Where in Australia, I take my hat off to the brands in Australia. Obviously, Australia doesn't have a huge population. To succeed in food, you got to be the best. Right, especially obviously you got high rents, high food costs, you know, high labor and everything. So you got to be competitive. You got to have amazing operations, and I think GYG has really proven that it can work anywhere if it works in Australia.
For us listening to you guys, and for investors thinking about Guzman, it's very much an Australian story today, I assume. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's I mean, our team's here, our foundation's here. You know, our main focus is, as Hilton was saying, was getting to 1,000 restaurants here in Australia. Obviously, we've got great growth and great partnership in Singapore and Japan, and the U.S. is going to take time. And I think one thing that we've done very well over the last 18 years is to focus. And we're very diligent in how we do things. We're very focused, and we get a lot of inquiries for other countries, but we got to make sure that obviously Australia continues to grow the way it is. We support our partnerships in Singapore and Japan, and we will get the U.S. right, but it'll just take a little bit of time.
No other countries on the horizon right now.
No more. Possibly New Zealand. That's close.
Yeah, okay, yeah. They're almost a state.
You don't want to spread your resources. I mean, Hilton said, man, we've got a solid team at All Essential, but they're working hard. And the last thing you want to do is take your eye off the ball, which we never have and we never will.
Yeah.
You know, we're in it for the long run.
So you guys are about to go public, and you know, we've heard the difficulties that can come with that, or what it might mean for management as well. So we're just interested, like, is this going to change anything for you guys? Is there going to be an obsession around stock price?
You're going to have a stock price ticker on the wall?
Ticker. Just talk us through,
I think it's a good question. I've been asked that a few times lately, is that we've been doing this for 18 years. You know, and obviously when you see the people coming into our restaurants, we got so many kids coming into our restaurants. And I was talking about the universities, you know, the university stores doing well to them. And we want to be here for legacy. We want to be here for the next 50, 100 years. And we say to our team, because as Hilton mentioned earlier, man, a lot of people at All Essential, they have options. You know, we incentivize our people very, very well, that the stock price will reflect the true value of the business in the long run. We've never made short-term decisions here, ever. We will, as a public company, we still will never make short-term decisions. You know, we want people to say, hey, listen, when we list, man, maybe you can look at the price in 10 years' time, because we're building, you know, we want to be the best and biggest restaurant company in the world. You know, and sometimes the stock goes up, sometimes it goes down. But, you know, at the end of the day, the stock price will be a true reflection of what the business is worth. And, you know, there'll be ups and downs, but we're here. Obviously, everybody's here. And I think, you know, when you look at our investor bases, we don't have private equity. We don't have people that got to get out in 3 years, man. People are holding this business for the long run, like a lot of us have for the past 18 years and counting.
What about you, Hilton? At Accent Group, I've done my research here. You delivered total shareholder returns in excess of 25% CAGR for the 11 years you're running, or co-CEO of Accent Group. So that's pretty impressive. So what's going to change for you? I guess it's just like returning to where you were before. And probably more importantly, what tips have you got for Stephen now that he's going to be public?
I think that, you know, obviously just kind of touching on the Accent Group, I mean, there was obviously a team effort. I mean, it was an amazing business. Team did an awesome job, and I loved my time as co-CEO with Daniel Agostinelli. And obviously, you know, working with Steve, I mean, it's an absolute privilege. And, you know, the most important thing for Steve and I is obviously around the values that we share, the communication and the trust. And we trust each other, and that obviously goes a long way. When I think about the Accent Group, I mean, it was an amazing result. But I think when you look at GYG, you know, sometimes one of the most challenging things in a listed company is really thinking about growth, because that's really what investors are looking for. And we're really super fortunate with GYG. I mean, we've got over 20 years of growth in Australia alone. So we're not looking around at Accent Group. We obviously had multiple brands. It was a very complex business. We made a lot of acquisitions. You know, you were limited to a degree with a number of our brands in terms of the number of stores we could have by brand. Whereas at GYG, to be in a situation where you had 180 restaurants in Australia and the white space is to 1,000 and the world is your oyster. I mean, it's just an opportunity. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And really that was one of the biggest drivers for me in terms of actually when Steve asked me if I'd like to join him as co-CEO, it was just, an opportunity to work with a founder to bring his vision and his dream to reality, and then to be part of, something so special where I haven't seen a consumer business in Australia that has the opportunity from a growth perspective in Australia, let alone globally. And, obviously with the mission and the purpose that we've got, it's so unique and it's got such a strong moat. So I think for us, it's really, as Steve said, just keeping our heads down. The stock price will reflect the value of the business over time. We've just got to perform. We've got to make sure that whatever we say we will do, we deliver. And we always act with integrity, and we'll always do the right thing. And that's kind of the most important thing. And I think the team are excited, but they all know that this is, we're at the starting line now. We're in the public environment, but the opportunity for our guests and our shareholders, our franchisees to be shareholders. I mean, that's so exciting, and
that's part of the best part, right? People that love GYG can now own a piece of it.
Yeah.
We've always run the business as with a public company ethos, from day one. So it's not new to our team members and to the leadership team in terms of the way we govern and run the business, but we will always make, as Steve said, long-term decisions and decisions in the long-term best interests of shareholders. And with the growth and the runway that we've got, the stock price will take care of itself. We just got to be very, very disciplined and execute.
In the prospectus and in your information, it has your aim is to be the best and biggest restaurant company in the world. Now, we've done our research here, and the biggest restaurant company in the world, debatable if they're the best, but the biggest is McDonald's with 40,000 locations across 100 countries. Is that the scale of your ambition?
Well, there's certain phases that we're going to go through. There's a couple of others in front of that we kind of want to catch up to. Because people say to me, aren't you so happy and so proud of the people at GYG, what you've done? I said, what do you mean? We only started. I'm trying to sort of enjoy the process with everybody. But there's probably another brand ahead of between us and McDonald's. But that's the vision. You look at, Mexican food in the United States and you look at the offering, I mean, people love it. I mean, Mexican food is unbelievable. Why can't this be, we look at it as the GYG's McDonald's for this generation. I mean, I'm not saying we're going to go to 40,000 restaurants tomorrow, but in time, and GYG is going to be around for a very, very long time. And it's we're so proud of this company. We're proud of the people that have built it. And we're just getting started, which is, so exciting for everybody that's involved.
Nice.
Man, can't wait.
Yeah. Well, they have had a 60 or 70 year head start on you.
Yeah.
So
They've done a good job for now.
Well, Stephen and Hilton, it's an exciting moment in the story of GYG. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you today. Thank you so much for taking the time with us
Thanks,
and the
guys.
Equity Mates community. And
Thank you.
all the best for the next 60 to 70 years.
Thank you for having us, guys. Always a treat.
congratulations, guys.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was epic. Thank you to Hilton and Stephen for making themselves available and jumping on the podcast. Bryce, we're going to take a quick break here. And on the other side, we're going to talk about how Guzman compares to some other quick service restaurants and talk a little bit about valuation as well. Welcome back to Equity Mates. We've just come off our Guzman y Gomez IPO interview with Hilton Brett and Stephen Marks, the co-CEOs of Guzman. Bryce, there were some things that Stephen and Hilton couldn't talk about, compare how they compare to other restaurants and valuation.
Yeah.
But before we get into it, what's your Guzman order?
Double, as I said, I think I said it in there, double chicken burrito bowl, brown rice, all the trimmings.
All the trimmings.
Yeah. Chopped up onions, coriander, pickles. I go with a couple of the sauces, the coriander sauce. Anyway, it's good.
Nice. So I've got a little tip. So I'm similar. I'm chicken burrito bowl, brown rice. And then where you can add like double chicken and stuff? Add sauteed vegetables, because then that includes guac. And it also, the sauteed vegetables really fills out the bowl. So a little tip for new players. Thank me later.
Nice. All right. Well, Ren, I think let's kick this conversation off, and it's probably worth defining who we're going to be comparing them to, because there are a lot of references throughout that conversation to Macca's and KFC and Domino's and the larger sort of fast food restaurants who, rightly so, you would think if we're talking about Guzman being a fast food restaurant, you would compare to these ones. But they don't have quite the same profile as Guzman do. So we want to just at least set the scene for who we're going to be comparing to.
Yeah. And when we say profile, it's really sort of growth potential, number of stores, how many stores they want to get to. So white space is what that is, how quickly they are growing and are forecast to grow, and then sort of similar restaurant economics. They're not all the same, but that's kind of like how you want to bucket them, because Macca's certainly doesn't have the white space that Guzman does, and certainly isn't growing as quickly. So that's kind of why you want to do an apples to apples comparison. So forget KFC, forget Collins Foods and Yum Brands and Domino's and Macca's. The four that we're talking about today are Chipotle, Carver, Sweet Green, and Wingstop.
Yes.
Now, they're all American, and that's just a function of there being a lot more like similar peers listed in America. So before we get into the numbers, introduce me to the companies.
Sure. So Carver is a fast casual Mediterranean restaurant. It's actually a leader in the Mediterranean category in the US with 309 restaurants. Chipotle, probably more familiar to people listening. It's a fast casual Mexican restaurant founded in 1993. They have 3,479 restaurants in the US. Then we've got Sweet Green. So they're a fast casual restaurant with a focus on salads and bowls. 227 restaurants in the US. And then Wingstop was the fourth. Chicken wing focused fast food chain, founded in 94. They have 1,926 restaurants.
Yeah.
So a couple there that are in the sort of low hundreds, a couple that are towards the growth ambitions of Guzman in the thousands.
Yeah. Now, they're all sort of growing in that double-digit range, both growing units and growing revenue, sort of teens and 20%. So that's why they're similar. And also, if you look at what they are saying themselves about their white space opportunity, how many more restaurants they think they can build, I was going to say, yeah. So Carver have said they are 31% penetrated, so a 69% white space opportunity, or at least this is based on how many stores they have and what they've publicly said they're targeting. And so you can calculate it from that. So 69% white space for Carver, 50% white space for Chipotle, 77% white space for Sweet Green, and 50% white space for Wingstop. And when we spoke to the Guzman guys, they were talking about an 80% white space opportunity in Australia. So you can sort of see how we're comparing more similar QSRs here, quick service restaurants, because they're growing at a similar rate. Similar store count, low thousands or in the hundreds, but probably most importantly, the growth opportunity is really there when we talk about valuation. So, with that said, Bryce, let's start comparing apples to apples.
Yes. So let's start by comparing the restaurant economics and getting an understanding of, firstly, their sales per store or average unit volume. Guzman y Gomez split it into drive-through and then their strip stores, which the guys referred to earlier on in the episode. Their drive-throughs deliver on average $6.1 million and their strips deliver $4.5 million. Now, if we compare that to the four, Wingstop is $2.9 million, Carver $3.9, and then Sweet Green and Chipotle up in the fours. Sweet Green $4.3 million and Chipotle $4.5. So pretty comparable.
Yeah, well, except for Guzman's drive-through.
The drive-through smashes it. Yeah.
And to be clear, we should say all of these numbers that we're talking about have been converted back into Aussie dollars. So even though they're US, that we're comparing apples to apples. So that is revenue, but I guess let's look at profit as well. Now, when we're looking at these restaurants, we're going to be talking about EBITDA throughout. So EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. The reason that we look at EBITDA for these restaurants, something I found out as we were preparing for this episode, is they all have different mixes of corporate stores and franchise stores. And if you look at net profit, then you start factoring in things like leases, which corporate stores have, but franchise stores might not have. So to alleviate the franchise corporate mix and to just kind of try and get as apples to apples as possible, a lot of the analysts in this space will use EBITDA.
Yeah.
So that's what we're using as a proxy for profit. And when we come to profit, the EBITDA margins for Guzman, 21.6% for the drive-through and 19.8% for the strip. How does that compare? So Carver, Chipotle, and Wingstop are all in 20%, 24.8%, 26.2%, and 26.3% respectively. And then Sweet Greens is 17%. So I would say Guzman is right in the middle of that range.
Yeah.
But I think the one thing that is in Guzman's favour is if we're not looking at margin, but we're actually just looking at straight cash or EBITDA. Guzman's drive-through, 1.3 million. And that's higher than any of the other competitors. Chipotle is close, 1.2 million, but then Carver at 1, Sweet Greens at 0.7, Wingstop at 0.8. So that's certainly something that Guzman is going to be hanging their hat on.
So it's clear that some metrics they're leading, others they're well and truly amongst it. I guess that then leads to the conversation around valuation, because the four competitors are all listed, so we can compare against market cap. The offer price for the IPO gives Guzman y Gomez a market cap of $2.2 billion.
Yeah.
Now, if we compare that to the four examples, Sweet Green is a $5.6 billion market cap. Carver is a $13.4 billion. Wingstop is a $17.1 billion, and Chipotle is a $131.6 billion market cap.
Not surprising. They've got, more than 10 times the amount of stores.
Yeah.
That's the value, the market value. But the question becomes valuation itself. Now, we said we use EBITDA as the sort of the profit metric here when we're talking about valuation to normalize the corporate stores v non-corporate stores and the effect of leases and stuff like that. Confusingly, rather than using market cap in valuation, we're going to use enterprise value here. The reason being, it accommodates if a company has heaps of cash or heaps of debt on the balance sheet. Guzman is about to do an IPO. It's about to raise a whole bunch of cash. So you want to take that out of the valuation.
Yeah.
So enterprise value for Guzman goes from 2.2 billion market cap to 1.9 billion enterprise value. Putting this all together, the valuation metric that we're comparing here is enterprise value to FY25 EBITDA. Okay, so bear with us here. On that metric, Guzman is currently trading at 32.6 times for the Australian segment. Now, how does that compare to some of its QSR rivals that we're talking about here? Similar to Chipotle, Chipotle is 34.1 times, but it's a lot lower than the other three we've been talking about. Wingstop, 58 times, Carver 82 times, Sweet Green 138 times. So that's kind of where Guzman sits relative to its peers on this enterprise value to FY25 EBITDA metric.
So, Ran, just want to be clear that we're not saying here that it's cheap or that this is a buy or sell in any way, shape or form. This is just to round out the conversation and I guess provide some colour to what the guys couldn't speak about before and just show how it does compare to some of the key competitors that they are pitching themselves against.
Yeah. But I think it's worth talking about. I think it's interesting. We're obviously excited about Guzman. I think I'm about to go and order some. So,
I do love it.
But look, we want more brands to list on the Aussie market. We want more consumer-facing and known Aussie brands to list on the Aussie market. It annoys us that all these companies get taken out by private money and get off the market. So forgive us if we get a little bit excited when one of our favourite food spots suddenly becomes an investment opportunity.
That's it, yeah. Well, good luck to the guys. And again, thanks. We do give them our thanks for taking the time with the Equity Mates community today. But we'll wrap it there. We'll probably go home, order some Guzman.
Yeah. And we can't wait to see an American-started Australian-Mexican brand go back to America and take over America.
Love to see it. All right, Ren, we'll leave it there. We'll pick it up next episode.
Sounds good.
You have been listening to an Equity Mates Media production. In the spirit of reconciliation, Equity Mates Media acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. This podcast is intended for education and entertainment purposes. Any advice is general advice only and has not taken into account your personal financial circumstances, needs, or objectives. Before acting on general advice, you should consider if it is relevant to your needs and read the relevant product disclosure statement. And if you're unsure, please speak to a financial professional. The hosts of this podcast and their guests may have positions in the companies mentioned. Equity Mates Media operates under an Australian Financial Services Licence 540697.